Knowledge is power.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the A to Z Dotabuff Top 100 Replay Review Series. This is episode 9 and the hero is Bloodseeker. This is the number 6 ranked Bloodseeker on Dotabuff, and he has over 1,000 games, over a 60% win rate, and he is above 6k MMR. And this is going to be a pretty decently skilled game on the EU West servers, so expect a competent level of play at least.
This one is in the bag.
But this guy plays Bloodseeker mostly as a jungle hero. He occasionally plays him as a safe laner, but most of his games are in the jungle. And Bloodseeker is one of the fastest junglers in the game. I would say he's behind Enigma, Axe, and maybe Chen. But Bloodseeker can get a really fast level 6 and get quite a bit of farm out of the jungle. And if you guys have been following me for a few months or since last year, I did make a jungling Bloodseeker guide, and in it I did show how to get level 6 by 5 minutes and Phase Boots, Quelling Blade, and Poor Man's Shield, as well as an extra like 300 gold by 5.5 minutes as well. So the timing for Bloodseeker jungle is usually you hit level 6 around 5 minutes to 5:30, and you get pretty decent farm, like around like 2,200 gold or something, 2,500 gold by 5 minutes as well. So really fast. And I'm not gonna talk too much about the jungling pattern. I will link the video that I made on the screen somewhere when I go back and edit this, but he is basically doing what I'm doing, I think. I haven't actually completely watched his jungle pattern, but he does go for the same starting items I recommend, and he does choke point jungle, as well as keep the farming pattern between the 2 hard camps and the medium camp, and so far he's pretty much has the jungle pattern I recommend. I didn't pick this video just because he's doing the same pattern I did, but I just think that's probably the most optimal way to do it. And this guy clearly has played so many Bloodseeker games. He definitely knows like the correct way to do this. But anyway, he's gonna send himself a Poor Man's Shield, and he does have Blood Rage and Thirst by level 3. He does go for max thirst. I think this is the correct build. In my video, I did recommend leveling Blood right because I thought it was faster for jungling, but I've now realized that thirst is superior in almost every way, just in terms of damage output in the early game. It's really good for just chasing people down and just dealing damage. The extra like 40 pure damage on Blood right is really not that important. Sure, the extra silence is nice, but it doesn't matter too much early. Early game, what really matters is like slows and just like right clicks in general. Just in the very early game. In the early to mid game, nukes, silences, and stuns become a lot more important. But just for like the first 6 or 7 minutes, even up to 10 minutes, slows and right clicks are really powerful. So Thirst is really good just for that. The good thing about Bloodseeker jungle is that you stay pretty much at full HP, unless you're right at the end of a hard camp. There's like a 5-second window where you're not pretty high HP. So if a support actually does come to gank or harass you, you can actually just turn and kill them, provided it's a solo support. Just because of the way Thirst works, you just turn around, hit them once, and because you usually just rush the Poor Man's Shield, they're going to do like 30 damage to you, you're going to do like 80 damage to them, and you're just going to kill them instantly. And you're going to be faster than them no matter what, just because of Thirst as well. So really strong, really safe. It does look like he's going to go for Midas, or this could be just Treads, but Usually if you go Trez on a jungler, you go for your stat item first because it gives you more damage. If you're an agility hero, that is. So it does look like it's going to be a minus. I watched most of this guy's games, and he goes minus a lot on this hero. I think the main reason he goes minus is to just keep up a way to farm when he's going around in the mid game, because there's really not too much time to farm for this kind of playstyle on a Bloodseeker. You really want to be running around and doing stuff and not farming too much. Obviously, on all heroes, you're going to want to farm and gank just to keep a good pattern up, but I guess the minus helps. I don't think it's really for experience, because Bloodseeker is not a hero that really lacks experience. And of course, you're going to get levels really fast in the jungle anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. Or he could just be going minus because he can, because jungling is extremely fast, and you're going to have it before 6 minutes usually. But it is pretty greedy. So he does go for Blood Rage at level 5. Or, excuse me, level 4. It just makes your jungling a bit faster. I guess he's not really going to rotate to the off lane before he hits 6 anyway. But yeah, he does hit 6 at 5:12, so pretty normal timing. Just a standard speed for how fast Bloodseeker jungles. And immediately just ruptures the offlaner. Can't really do much, he has to run away, super out of position. Even goes for the chain, but that is first blood. So, yeah, when you hit level 6, you just want to use Rupture on a lane. Usually the side lanes are better than the mid lanes, and the off lane is the closest, so he just went for it. But the reason why you go for the side lanes is because there's a lot more distance to the tower usually, so they have to run a bit further to be safe. Alright, so he does pick up his minus, and we'll see if he goes for another gank once his Rupture is up. I didn't talk too much about his jungling method, because I don't want to just repeat what I said in the video, and I know a lot of you have watched that one. It's one of my most watched videos. So if you do want to know the proper method and how to deal with different camps and what you should do to stay alive and jungle fast, just go back to my video, watch that. But I would suggest maxing Thirst instead of maxing Blood, right? As I said before. Alright, so he's gonna get a boost. He sees the Timber Saw out of position, and probably just gonna Rupture him. Yep. And that's a dead Timber Saw. Especially against mobile offlaners like this, Rupture is super strong. The first gank, I think, is probably the most effective because it's going to be super early. So pre-6, the only heroes that should be level 6 are the mid laners usually. Or unless the offlane got really fed. But most offlaners won't expect a Rupture just hitting them at 5 minutes. They won't have TPs in their inventory. They'll usually play pretty far up, unless they get zoned pretty hard. So that first gank usually works out pretty well. Alright, so he does max Thirst by 7. Thirst is just really, really strong early. If you take a look at the damage values, it's actually 40 damage per hero if they go down to 1 or 2%. Basically just low HP. And that's times 5, so potentially you have plus 200 damage. But that's if everyone's super low. And usually in the early game, this is another reason why Thirst is really good to get early. People usually tend to be low HP in lane, or trading harass, right? Very rarely do you see everyone on the enemy team hovering around full in the laning phase. It does happen in the later game because everyone has pretty good sustain, and people won't be sort of in lane taking harass during the mid game, but in the early game that does happen as we see a fight happening out and just Rupture, and you just put the Blood right on top of the hero. Actually, I was sort of talking over that. I'm gonna rewind this. Sorry about that. But we'll see how this gank plays out. We'll see exactly what he does to gank this mid lane. Alright, so goes. Just Rupture. Cast the Blood Right and cast the Blood Rage on himself. So when ganking, there are sort of two choices you have. You can either Blood Rage yourself or Blood Rage the hero you're ganking. And it's really important to choose the correct target, because even though Blood Right does do the make people take 40% more damage, it also increases the damage they deal. So if you put it on someone like a Zeus or an SF, and especially if there are creeps around, you can end up healing them instead, because it does heal for 25% of every unit they kill. So if they have like an AoE spell, like say you're ganking an SF mid, and you Blood Rage him for extra damage, if he raises something and he gets a creep, you just healed him by like 100 something HP, which is not what you want for a gank. So you have to be extremely careful if you're Blood Raging someone else. Blood Raging yourself is a bit safer, but it also lowers your damage output by a little bit, because you're only increasing your own damage, right? So you only get the increased damage on Rupture and Blood Right. But there he Blood Raged himself. Definitely the correct move, since the Lina Laguna bladed the TA and she was brought down to like 200 HP instantly. If she had Blood Rage on, she might have just killed her and healed up, and that gank would have been a complete turnaround. So be extremely careful Blood Raging someone. Alright, so Rupture. Blood Rage himself so that the Rupture target takes more damage. And it's gonna Blood Rage. Blood Rage also has the advantage of you being able to cast it on yourself to increase your damage, no matter how far away the target is. I think the new threshold is around 1600, but that's usually more than enough for you to get your damage out. If he had Blood Rage Lina, he would have had to walk up to her, which is not ideal. So in this instance, he's gonna Blood Rage the Troll, because he does a lot more damage than he does. Not gonna bother Blood Raging Roshan because there's the Lincolns. Alright, so now he goes back to the levels in Blood Right. So I'm guessing the just level 2 Blood Rage was just for faster jungling. I've seen a lot of his games, and he usually gets level 2 Blood Rage, but sometimes he gets only level 1, and he gets the early level in Blood Right. He did it one game against the dual off lane, which is probably understandable since he wants to have that silence early for the ganks. Alright, so he just went Brown Boots and he went straight into Yules. Pretty interesting choice. Not too uncommon. People like to go Yules on Bloodseeker just to have a way to cancel TPs, as that is Bloodseeker's biggest weakness. Is anyone you Rupture or Blood Right can just TP out, and they're usually just safe from your ganks. But with Yules, you can prevent people from TPing. You can do Yules into Blood Right, which is not super strong, but it's pretty nice to use. If the hero is someone like a Storm or an AM, that combo usually doesn't work because the cast delay between Blood Right and Yules is a bit too large. But against someone like a fast-moving target like a Lina with Fiery Soul, is probably very good. Alright, so I'm just gonna go back to jungling. All 5 heroes missing off the map besides the Enigma top, so he's feeling a bit unsafe. We'll see what his next item is. Alright, so let's see how this gank plays out. Just immediate Rupture, he's gonna Blood Rage himself, and that's probably a dead Lina. Yules also does have the added benefit of increasing your mana regen, so you have sustain to gank, which is really nice. A lot of the Bloodseeker builds I see include Blade Mail. A lot of people like that item on Bloodseeker. I think it was good before the change. Now I'm not too sure. I haven't seen this guy get Blade Mail on any of his Bloodseeker games, but the number 7 and the number 2 Bloodseeker get Blade Mail. Number 7 Bloodseeker goes phase Blade Mail SNY pretty much every game. And this guy has a pretty unique build. He goes Yules and Travels and basically just movement speed items. He goes Yasha after this too. But Blade Mail used to be really good because the way Blood Rage worked was that Blood Rage made you take 40% extra damage. So if you had Blade Mail on, you took 40% extra damage. And then the 40% extra damage you got from Blade Mail was also amplified by the Blood Rage. So if a lion fingered you for like 600 damage, it would deal 840 damage to you, and then that 840 would get amplified by 40 again. Obviously that's before reduction, but it was insanely strong. Basically, if you had Blade Mail on and Blood Rage on, people, if they hit you, they would just melt to the damage. But it has been removed, so it's not too strong anymore. I still think it's a good item. Alright, so this Bloodseeker gonna rotate towards this mid fight, and let's see who he decides to rupture. So, good Blood Right hits most people. Ruptures the Lina, so placing a very high priority on that Lina not being able to do anything in fights. And the Yule's canceling TPs, pretty nice. Notice that the way he fights, he doesn't just rupture someone and run in. The way I see a lot of Bloodseekers play is they rupture someone, they cast Blood Right over the area they ruptured, so they like force the target to move like 400 range, and then they just run in after him. But what that usually does is they just end up dying to like 2 stuns and people right-clicking them because they have Blood Rage on themselves. So notice what the Bloodseeker did in that fight. He ruptured the Lina, casted a good Blood Right so that people had to sort of scatter around. The Enigma like ran down, Lina ran to the right, and Wraith King ran up. But he didn't just book it for the Lina, because the Enigma and the Wraith King were still sort of around, so they could have stunned him. And the Lina wasn't silenced either, so she probably could have casted a few spells. He sort of just kited around the fight and waited for a good opportunity to run back in. Notice that Bloodseeker only has 1000 HP, but with Blood Rage, he actually takes a lot more damage, so really dangerous for you to get stunned. Good to just sort of kite around. Alright, so next item is setting himself on the courier, and it's going to be a Yasha. Yeah, so he really likes just going this movement speed build, and it helps with the kiting, as I said before. Alright, so the way he's been using Blood Right this game, usually the combo is you rupture someone and you place Blood Right like a little bit off center to where you think they're going to run, so they either have to run in a position you want or just take a lot of rupture damage to run through the Blood Right. But you can also use it sort of as a zoning spell, so the way he placed it in the mid fight, it was pretty nice because it cut off the hill completely, so... Alright, so Rupture, Enigma. Again, notice he backed off on the hill, so the Enigma couldn't use his Malefice on him. Just being extremely careful not to just run into people just because he has Rupture on. And the way he did that was really nice. So he casted Rupture, casted the Blood Right, and the Enigma started TPing. But he knows that Blood Right is a 3-second delay, basically. Is it 3 seconds? Yeah, 3 seconds. So he cast the Blood Right before the TP channel started. So he knew he was able to get the Blood Right damage off, and then Yules to cancel the TP. If he had Yules before the Blood Right damage, he wouldn't have... before the Blood Right popped, he wouldn't have gotten it, because he would have still been in the air. It's just good knowledge of timings and not panicking. But as I was saying, with the Blood Right placement, you want to place it in choke points, so people sort of have to run through it or sort of get cut off from each other. Unless the enemy team is communicating really well, people will usually run in different directions to avoid the Blood Right. No one wants to get 6 seconds silenced and take 220 pure damage. Or 240 pure damage, excuse me. So it's sort of like a chain frost type of thing where people just sort of spread out from each other. Usually they won't run in the same direction. So pretty nice to sort of create havoc in team fights. Alright, so it does look like he's going to go for a Manta style. He can disjoint the Rape King stun. And I think he can disjoint Light Strike Array if he's good, but this movement speed build is pretty standard. Again, just really helps him just run in and out of fights. Doesn't look like he needs to do too much damage this game since he's with a Troll and TA. And this is the advantage of sort of Bloodseeker jungle, right? You farm extremely fast, you provide a lot of utility for your team. Even if you aren't like a Nature's Prophet in the jungle, like you can't really rotate to lanes super early. But if someone's really low, the vision actually does help a lot in the early game. And when they drop below the HP threshold, if you still have vision of them, it can really help a lot of heroes secure kills because they can't really juke around in the trees and whatever. Especially helpful for your mid laner if he's being aggressive. Doesn't get juked by anyone in the trees near the tower. Alright, so most of the time he is farming in the jungle. He's not going to farm in the lane. Again, this is a good habit for any like very tempo controlling heroes or gank heavy heroes. You don't want to show yourself on the map because that sort of gives the enemy information and gives them relief from your pressure. So if they see you showing top, they know they're probably safe farming bottom. But this is another sort of perk of the Boots of Travel build. It's that you can gank and sort of exert map pressure a lot faster and a lot more than if you had just treads. Because people realize that, oh, he has travels, he can be there at any time. Alright, so some other skill builds, item builds on Bloodseeker. As I said before, the number 7 Bloodseeker likes to go for Phase, Blade Mail, and SNY. Looks like he's going to get caught out here. And Yules into the Blood Right, pretty good combo. Works really easily on someone like Enigma who can't really blink away or run away fast enough. It's gonna go farm creeps in the middle of the fight, and again, just cutting in and out, never really hard committing unless he knows for sure he can get a kill. Looks like he's a bit out of position here, and yeah, ran in a bit too deep, and his team was retreating. Probably just a bit of miscommunication. But as I was saying, the number 7 Bloodseeker likes to go for Blade Mail, SNY. And then he goes for items like Heart and Abyssal Blade. So Heart is sort of just like, you want to be really tanky so you can just run in. And instead of what this guy is doing where he's like cutting in and out of fights, the Heart and SNY build sort of just allows you to run in, soak up damage with your Blade Mail and your amplified damage from Blood Rage, and sort of just stay on someone. That build is pretty fun too. Pretty effective. Usually as Bloodseeker, you sort of want to rupture a core, and then let your team sort of handle the core and run at supports, because supports usually can't handle you running at them. You're super fast, you do a lot of damage, and you have the silence. Especially with a blade mail build, that is usually how you play it. Of course you can run at cores when they don't have BKB, but once they get BKB, it's a bit harder to play. Rupture does go through all forms of magic immunity though, so something that's pretty nice to note. Looks like this Bloodseeker's running there. He has 756 movement speed, but people are dying, so it's going down. But it's really fast, pretty ridiculous. And Rupture on the Timber Saw. Doesn't even need to use because he does so much damage. That was actually insane. I'm gonna rewatch that actually. Alright. Jesus, this guy does 300 damage per hit, pretty much. Or I think it was more than 300 damage a hit. But he only has 140 base damage. That's just the strength of Bloodright and Thirst. Everyone was pretty low HP, so he had pretty good plus damage. And then Blood Rage was just there to amplify all his damage. So he basically 3-shot the Timber after he was standing still from Rupture at like 3/4 HP. And this Quap just stands there and takes a Chakram to the face. That's sort of questionable, but we'll just sort of accept that and move on. Alright, so it doesn't look like this push is going to work out. They have to back off. We'll see what his next item is. He likes to go for items like Lincoln's. He likes to go for Dagon a lot. Dagon is sort of the extreme pub seeker build. I'm sure you've had Bloodseekers in your games go like, they go Brown Boots, Midas, and they go Dagon 5 and then F-Blade. And that's like the super pub build. But Dagon is actually pretty decent. If you Blood Rage yourself, your Dagon does a lot of damage, and you can sort of double Blood Rage. We'll talk about it after this fight. So Rupture really nicely placed Bloodright, so the Wraith King had to walk all the way through it to take maximum Rupture damage. He didn't want to walk towards the enemy team. And again, sort of cutting in and out, being really fast and annoying. Bloodseeker is really good in these sort of really long fights because everyone gets super low, so your damage is pretty insane. Another reason why you just shouldn't run in after you rupture someone. You want to stay alive for as long as possible because the longer the fight goes, the lower everyone gets usually, and the more damage you can output. At the beginning of a fight, you do very little damage because everyone's usually full HP. So if you're just running at someone, you're not going to hit hard because no one's low. Sort of has to stay back, wait for your time to go in, and then go in. What was I talking about before? I actually lost my train of thought, which is unfortunate. Oh, right. He likes to go for Dagon. So people will go for Dagon because you can Blood Rage yourself for the Dagon boost. So you boost the 800 and then you can Dagon your target. So you sort of get an extremely strong nuke. Especially with E-Blade, you can sort of one-shot people, which is extremely strong. And it looks like he's going to go down here because people are buying back and you're getting a black hole. But what can you do?
Double kill.
So if you actually run the damage calculations, E-Blade Dagon is... Well, if you E-Blade someone, the Dagon 5 does 1400 damage, just straight up. Even with like the regular reduction. So 1400 and then you amplify it by 40% and 40% again. I don't know the actual numbers, and I'm not about to calculate it in my head right now because I'm a bit lazy, but it is quite the nuke, if you can probably tell. It's like over 2,000, I think. Probably something like 2,500. That's probably close to what it is, but really strong. You can like one-shot people, but the problem is that is a lot of farm, and people sort of run that as the safe lane Bloodseeker, which is usually not what you want to do. People usually have BKBs, they have reaction time, they can Manta, Yules. Even supports can live through it if they're fast enough with their reaction. Problem is you just have to run up an E-Blade and Dagon, and E-Blade got nerfed, so it's not really fast anymore. But still a good build to go Dagon, I think. If you're going for this sort of in and out kiting sort of Bloodseeker. Not if you're going for the heart phase, like Blade Mail Bloodseeker, where you sort of just man up and run in and hope people hit you. The Dagon is really good just because it's on a pretty low cooldown on level 5. It's like 15 seconds. So you can get multiple Dagon 5s with Blood Rage off in a fight. So that's pretty effective. Alright, so Rupture on the Wraith King, and just gonna force him to stay there for a while. One thing I forgot to mention is that Rupture actually lasts 12 seconds, which is an insane amount of time. To put that in perspective, Doom lasts 15 seconds, so it's only 3 seconds less than Doom. And unlike Doom, they actually they're not gonna move during it, or else they're gonna take massive damage. Unfortunately, they don't get silenced or have their items muted, but you can't ask for everything. Alright, so it looks like they're just going to try to bake the brace here. Usually with Bloodseeker, once you hit the late game, or sort of the later mid game, you don't want to be using Blood Rage on yourself. Notice that he's been mostly Blood Raging the TA and the Quap. The Quap, because she has really nice AoE abilities. If you have a Blood Raged Wave of Terror and Scream on everyone, that's usually going to bring everyone like down to maybe like 30-20% because of how much damage it does. He's Blood Raging the TA because she has insane burst with her Meld Strike, so she can probably just one-shot someone. So he's gonna put Rupture priority on the Wraith King this time, and a nicely placed Blood Right to zone everyone, just in front of the choke point so people aren't gonna run through it, sort of forcing people back from the Roshan pit. Really nice. So he's rupturing the Wraith King. He is their enemy carry, just making sure that he can't run around during fights and hit people. Especially effective against melee carries, because they have to usually run around to deal damage. Ranged carries can sort of ignore Rupture if the fight is close to them, but melee carries have to run around and hit people. So really good to use Rupture on a melee carry. Again, putting Blood Rage on the Quap, big team fight damage, also letting her heal. You should usually just use Blood Rage on anyone who's not full HP if they're not in danger of getting ganked, or if you're not about to fight and you don't want them to take extra damage. Because Blood Rage is 0 mana cost and it has a really low cooldown. So just helping them heal up a little bit with the 25% healing is pretty good. Alright, so Troll's going down here. Again, not gonna commit, just sort of cutting in and out. Sieging with Mantas. So in terms of Blood Raging for a team fight and not a gank, Oh, looks like this Wraith King's gonna go in. And I'm gonna rupture the Timber Saw this time. Alright, looks like a fight's gonna break out. And this Timber Saw's still standing here. Again, 12 seconds of rupture time. Well, looks like this Bloodseeker is playing Objective Dota. His team's dying, but he's taking racks, so worth it. Look at his movement speed. Jesus, it was almost 1,000. 980. And it looks like he's gonna actually clean up here. Unfortunately, the Wraith King's a bit too farmed. And he's gonna have to run away. Yeah, and the way he played that was really smart. So, just because based on the hero, you don't want to join the fight at the start because you don't do that much damage. You don't want to run in. So he's just gonna sort of focus on the racks while his team's fighting. And once his team is done fighting, he's 1, taking the racks already, and 2, everyone is low, so he can sort of go in then. But as I was saying before, when you Blood Rage during team fights, sort of judge based on who has the biggest AoE damage, who has the sort of most survivability so they don't get bursted by the extra 40%. And Blood Rage does last through BKB, which means that if you Blood Rage someone and they BKB, they still get Blood Rage. So don't be afraid to use it on a carry who has BKB. Now, unfortunately, you cannot Blood Rage someone who's already BKB'd. Let's say he's gonna do some Manta Illusion sieging. This sort of stuff is cute, but it's not too effective anymore since the illusions got nerfed for building damage. Alright, so he does go for Dagon after Lincoln's. Lincoln sort of suits his style of kiting, but I'm just gonna interject my opinion here. I don't really like it too much. I prefer just him going for the straight Dagon, or maybe just like a BKB or something, but it's his build. He's probably tested it a lot, and it probably works for him. Alright, so he's gonna just run in, Dagon, and run away. Looks like he's a bit out of position, though. Oh, too fast. Just runs straight out of the LSA. It's pretty funny. Guess this Lina isn't used to fighting someone who has like 700 movement speed out of Yules. Alright, again, split pushing. This team is making space. And this game is probably over. So, this style of Bloodseeker is pretty interesting. A bit different from the sort of pub seeker builds you see sometimes. I do think that the phase SNY Blade Mail build is still decently viable, but this build seems to be really effective too, so can't say which one's better, but I like both of them very much. Alright, I think that's the end of this video. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. And if you guys have any suggestions of how I can do this better, I would be glad to hear any feedback. The way I've been doing most of them up until now is I sort of just talk about what I see happening on the screen and what I notice in terms of like gameplay, decision making, and just item choices, and I try to provide a reasonable explanation and just give some insight into what these players might be thinking. Obviously, I am not an expert at all 110 heroes or however many there are, but I think I'm at a decent enough level to talk about most of them, and that's why we have this replay in the first place, so we can sort of use it as reference as well while I'm talking about it, and it sort of prompts me to bring up tips and sort of item choices and stuff like that. But the way I've been doing it is it's a bit of like stream of consciousness. So if you guys have suggestions on what I should focus on, maybe you would like to see more item builds, more discussion on maybe like skill builds, or sort of decision making, or how they cast their spells. If you guys would like just anything you want me to focus on, I'd be open to suggestions. But yeah, the next hero is Bounty Hunter, and I think that one should be pretty interesting. I'll try to find a good roamer or offlaner for that one. Anyways, this was Bloodseeker, and I'll see you guys next time.
Is being attacked. Dire's middle tower has fallen. Dire's middle tower taking damage.
Death by decrees.
Fallen. Dire's Ancient is under attack. Radiant victory